competitive paranoia and how it's escalated. Hi, everyone. I'm Ed Garsten, and welcome to episode 130 of Tales from the Beat, where we look at news and PR from both sides of the scrimmage line. Checked your news feed lately? You ever wonder where some of that garbage comes from? See what I got here. Some interesting stuff. Psychology says if you bring up these 9 topics in a conversation, you have below average social skills. Well, things like graphic health details. Oh, so more like, I kind of feel like shit today. I guess that's wrong, right? Spreading off as gossip. Ooh, it's heathen. How this one? Rock icon 66 calls out artists acting 25 at 65. What? I don't think that's cool for the fans, it says. Okay. Or how about this one I just saw? Looking at the bromance between George Clooney and Adam Sandler. Hi, turkey on Thanksgiving between the bros, right? Let's be honest. These days, anyone with a connected device and an agenda can cook up content and blast it on the internet. Doesn't matter if it's true or not. And actually, this one crossed just today. The headline announces Alex Bregman signs with the Seattle Mariners. But when you click through, you see it's just some local Seattle sports columnist sucking his thumb, hoping for the move. In fact, this is true. I mean, at the end of the story, there's a line that actually says, "This is a prediction, not a report." In other words, it's kind of bullshit. But you know what? It just very well might come true. I You know, it almost makes me hanker for the good old days when there were a lot more actual newspapers and credible news organizations. And we basically, we kind of cribbed from each other, to be honest with you. True story. Absolutely true story. I worked at CNN during what many consider its heyday, the 80s and 90s, while the network had bureaus all over the world, needed a vast amount of content to fill 24 hours and to service the affiliates with material. It also fought derision from the broadcast networks who had sneered CNN, that CNN stood for Chicken Noodle Network, because we ran, well, honestly, a very lean organization, operation, not much flash. Our mantra was the news is the star. So, no high paid blow dry people. But, that also created a bit of an inferiority complex for CNN. The bosses would look at established news icons such as the New York Times and the Washington Post as the standards of the day. And we were often tasked with trying to match or at least follow up on their stories, whether or not they were suitable for television. So let's turn the Wayback Machine to 1986. I was working as a correspondent at CNN's Southeast Bureau. It was based in Atlanta. I covered the whole South, like 7 states. Now, one day, one of the big bosses sees a story in the New York Times about the Tennessee Tom Bigby Waterway. Now, that's a major Army Corps of Engineers project that would give ships entree to the Ohio and Tennessee River Basin from the Gulf of Mexico through Mobile, Alabama. It was also supposed to be a haven for water sports like fishing and water skiing and, just a real great project. Well, the article alleged, though, the 10-Tom, as it was kind of known, was a failed pork barrel disaster that was largely unused. Total waste of taxpayers' money. And when the Times reporter visited, there wasn't any water skiers, not one damn water skier. Oh, man. Big Boss barely finished reading this story when he calls over to the Bureau and orders me to go to the 10-Tom and grill the Army Corps about this. And he specifically demanded I ask this question: why are there no water skiers on the 10-Tom? Okay. Next day, crew and I hop over to Columbus, Mississippi, where we met up with some folks from the Army Corps, and we boarded a boat upon which we'd cruise the 10-Tom, gather some B-roll, and conduct the interviews. The problem was, this was December, and even in the deep South, there's something they call winter. And on this day, it was freaking windy, cold, rainy, really, just so miserable. But we soldiered on. The big boss wants a story. Just as we're about to start our interview with the Army Corps guy, I warn him about the question I'm ordered to ask. Old Southern boy gives me a devilish look as he asks, "Can I be totally honest?" "Of course," I say. He warns I might not be able to use his answer, but okay, fine, let's just do this and we'll deal with it. So there we were in layers of clothing. A rubber rain suit, a trench coat, our teeth are chattering, and I figure, let's get this over with. "Sir," I ask, "why are there no water skiers out here on the 10-Tom today?" He looks me in the eye, he smiles, replies as he's shivering, "Because it's fucking cold out here." Well, the soundbite I used in the story is a little more family-friendly dodge to that question. So now I got to turn this turkey into an actual story, since CNN spent the money to send us over there and the big boss expected something substantial. Somehow I found a friendly alcoholic boater who just loved the 10-Tom, and a sympathetic Army Corps person tipped me about the waterway being used as a drug smuggling route. Would have been nice to know a little earlier on, right? You put it all together and boom, there's TV. Here it is.
Back when the barge tow Crescent first started pushing loads for a living in 1940, the quickest way to the Gulf of Mexico from, say, Pittsburgh was to sail down the Ohio River to the Mississippi, hang a left and go south. But now, thanks to a man-made shortcut known as the Tennessee Tombigbee Waterway, or 10-Tom, the Crescent's trip from the Steel City to the Gulf is 300 miles shorter. It took 13 years and almost $2 billion to complete the project, which connects the Tennessee River on the north to the Black Warrior River on the south. Alabama Congressman Tom Bevel, who sponsored the project, had to fight off cries of pork barrel from his colleagues. And on January 15, 1985, the first barge oozed through the locks at Demopolis, Alabama. 23 months later, business is slow on the 10-Tom. Only about one-third of projected freight tonnage is being shipped along its waters. Army Corps of Engineers spokesman Sam Green says that's because it was completed 21 months ahead of schedule, throwing shippers off guard. And
we're suffering now in the export coal business, and that's one reason why the tonnage on the waterway is not up to expectations. We think it'll get there, but it's not up there yet. Exports of coal off the Gulf Coast are down about 30%.
One thing the Corps didn't expect was use of the waterway for the flight of the so-called snowbirds from the north, who used the 10-Tom to go south for the winter. Jim Carlson escaped Minnesota in the Passadon about a month ago and has been docked at the Toten float near Columbus, Mississippi ever since.
Oh, this is so easy. We rode down the Mississippi and the Ohio on the crest, high water, big, huge trees floating at us, and it was kind of horrible. And then we got into the peace and the quiet and the loveliness of the 10-Tom. And it's a friendly river.
But while pleasure craft and barges ply up and down the 10-Tom, the Mississippi Bureau of Narcotics fears another sort of cargo will find its way upstream: illegal guns and drugs. One reason is vessels aren't screened as they enter the waterway, and local law enforcement agencies aren't allowed to stop and search them without probable cause. A boat carrying contraband could enter the country in Mobile, and using the 10-Tom could reach almost any port east of the Mississippi and a few west.
Let me say this, the 10-Tom is not a problem. What we're trying to do is make sure that it doesn't get to be a problem.
Davis says there haven't been any drug arrests on the 10 Tom so far, but one boat from Texas was stopped with 2 convicted criminals aboard and a cache of automatic weapons. It's been rough sailing so far for the 10 Tom, and the government is hoping its $2 billion ditch won't leave it high and dry. Ed Garsten, CNN, along the Tennessee Tom Bigby Waterway near Columbus, Mississippi.
Well, yeah, a long time ago. After it aired, the boss challenged me on why were there no shots of water skiers? Well, being the wise ass I was, and still am, I replied. Because it was fucking cold. I expected to get fired, but instead he smiled and he deadpanned. December. Yeah, I imagine it would be. True. That's Tales from the Beat for now. I'm Ed Garsten, and I'll be back soon with more tales. Take care.